Hi there, welcome to What's Happening in Brazil. As usual, let's take a look in the latest and most important news from the country.
President Jair Bolsonaro told lies about the Brazilian electoral system during a meeting with about 40 ambassadors at the Planalto Palace on July 18th. The president himself called the meeting. Bolsonaro spoke about an investigation by the federal police on a hacker invasion of the Superior Electoral Court in 2018. According to Bolsonaro, the hackers had allegedly accessed the system for 8 months and were able to change the name of contenders, plus transfer votes from one candidate to another. At night, the court refuted Bolsonaro's accusations, assuring that the 2018 attack did not incur in a security breach of the electronic voting machines. The court also emphasized that it is not possible to manipulate the equipment through the internet. During the meeting with ambassadors, Bolsonaro also mentioned videos supposedly recorded during the 2018 elections showing electronic voting machines filling out the numbers automatically. At the time, the electoral justice proved that the videos were altered, therefore they were fake. Bolsonaro's attitude generated outrage in the political sector. Lula, his main political opponent in the October presidential elections, said on Twitter that, quote, "It is a pity that Brazil does not have a president who calls 50 ambassadors to talk about something of significance to the country, jobs, development, or the fight against hunger, for instance. Instead, he tells lies against our democracy," unquote. Last year, agribusiness was responsible for 97% of all illegal deforestation in Brazil. That's what shows a research conducted by Map Biomas, a network of NGOs, universities, and tech startups that makes surveys on the use of soil in the country. The study also shows that the Amazon rainforest was the most affected biome regarding vegetation loss in 2021, followed by Cerrado, which is the country's wooded grassland, and Caatinga, a semi-arid biome. This research attests, once again, to how fallacious it is the official speech of big agribusiness companies. These companies guarantee they are doing everything to block the purchase of cattle from farmers who illegally deforest. Last year, Brazil's federal public ministry concluded a third of all the cattle purchased by JBS company in Pará state were from illegally deforested areas.
The storms taking place in Brazil's northeast region since May, mainly in Pernambuco state, would have been 20% weaker if it was not for climate change. That's what shows a study conducted by Brazilian and foreign scientists.
More than 25,000 temporarily homeless people and 133 deaths, landslides and flooded houses. These are some of the sad consequences of heavy rains in part of Brazil's northeast region, especially in Pernambuco state, between the end of May and the beginning of June. The data are part of the World Weather Attribution Study released in the first days of June. The initiative involved scientists from several countries in order to answer the question: would this catastrophe have happened in the same way if the planet had not warmed 1.2 degrees centigrade due to human interference?
As a result of analyzing the weather and natural climate variability, taking greenhouse gas emissions and deforestation into consideration, we are able to determine that this event, although rare, had the possibility of being about 20% more intense as a result of climate change.
Historically, the region has dealt with uncontrolled development on riverbanks and hillsides, in addition to misery and abandonment of the most vulnerable populations.
Factors like urban expansions in areas at risk of landslides and flooding are one of the factors that amplify the impacts of rain and floods. Buildings that do not meet security standards worsen this situation. And there is also the problem of drainage, which is more severe in some specific neighborhoods and regions.
Some bills pending on the country's National Congress seek to alter current legislation on the issue. They seek to loosen rules so that people can, for example, build on riverbanks. On the one hand, these bills raise concerns. On the other, there is an effort to find solutions.
Measures such as the installation of dams can retain the water before it reaches the settlements, and then it can be released little by little when the rain stops. Dike construction can be done and people can be reallocated from flood-prone areas. There is a series of measures that need to be thought out and planned. The lack of planning, in part, contributes to increasing these risks.
7 works from Ceará state artists were selected to participate in the exhibition Museari Queer Art in Spain. It collects works that talk about sexual and gender diversity.
To think about art beyond heterosexuality and cisgender bodies. That's the goal of the exhibition Museari Queer Art, opened in the Xativa Belas Artes Museum in Spain. The novelty of this year's edition is the presence of 7 works by artists from Ceará state.
Sempre que eu vejo os meus trabalhos,
Whenever I see my works reaching the world, it's always a beautiful moment to think about the possibilities of people who will see them and who they will affect.
Iris was another artist selected for the exhibition. She is a travesti and has a degree in acting. She exposes pictures of her child's ear in sweet fabrics that help her understand her sexuality and gender identity.
I began the work by experimenting with my childhood photos, sewing them by hand, tearing them up and sewing them by hand. This project is part of my studies as an artist. I have been investigating mainly performance art and issues related to gender transition, or as I prefer to say, gender betrayal.
The exhibition will be open until July 25th. After that, people from all around the world will be able to see the works by accessing the website museari.com.
And now let's learn a tasty, quick and cheap dish. It's time for Brazilianism.
Today's recipe will be prepared with the bone sauce and marrow butter I taught you guys here on the show. Start by cooking the cassava in a pressure cooker. When the cassava finishes cooking, put aside 2 whole pieces and dice the rest. Then put aside it all. In a pan, braise onion and parsley and green onion stems using a tablespoon of marrow butter. You can also use cooking oil, butter or olive oil. Add a pinch of salt. Add garlic. Finally, add pepper and let it brown slightly. I have included tomato and pepper, but they are optional. You can use it or not. And if you have annatto or paprika, you can add them too. If you want to put tomato puree instead of tomato, that's up for you. Anyway, use what you have at hand to season and add color and flavor to the broth. Add the diced tomatoes, mix well and let it heat up. Now that's time for the bone sauce. Put it in the pan and let it warm up. The broth has already boiled, the spices are smelling delicious, but the broth is still thin. Now comes the little secret of how we will thicken this broth. Do you know those pieces of cassava that we put aside? I will blend them with some broth, then return them to the pan. I'm using cassava, but you can use other ingredients to thicken the broth. It can be cooked potatoes, cassava flour, or stale bread. It can even be leftover rice. You just need to warm it up and then blend the rice with the broth. I will add the diced cassava. I will also add a tablespoon of marrow butter so that the broth becomes creamy. Parsley, green onion, and pepper. And it's ready. Look how beautiful!
Did you like the show? So hit the like button and share it with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to receive notifications. See you next week.